The Awakening Storm. The crystal spires of the Corvathian capital world Nexaris gleamed under the light of twin suns, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floors of the imperial palace. Emperor Faction stood before the massive viewing window in his throne room, his four arms crossed behind his back as he gazed out at the sprawling city below. His purple skin bore the ceremonial scars of 100 victories, and his 6 eyes reflected the pride of an empire that had never known defeat. For 5 centuries, the Corvathian Empire had expanded across the galaxy like a slow-moving storm, consuming worlds and civilizations with methodical precision. They were the apex predators of space, and Faction ruled them all with an iron fist wrapped in silk gloves. No species had ever challenged their dominance successfully. None had ever been foolish enough to try. Until today. Commander Rillick entered the throne room with the quick, nervous steps of someone bearing unwelcome news. His usually pristine uniform showed signs of hasty travel, and his breathing was slightly elevated. Faction didn't turn around, but his reflection in the window showed the slightest tightening around his primary eyes. "Speak," the Emperor commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Rillick activated his holographic display, and blue light filled the air between them. Images flickered to life showing distant star systems, trade routes, and what appeared to be damaged space stations. "Your Majesty, we have received disturbing reports from 17 frontier worlds. Something is happening on the outer rim that defies explanation." Faction finally turned, his massive form casting a shadow across the room. At 3 meters tall and built like a living fortress, he was an intimidating sight even to his own people. "Define something, Commander." The hologram shifted to show grainy surveillance footage from a mining station. Bipedal figures moved through the corridors with fluid grace, their pale skin and strange proportions unlike any known species. They wore form-fitting suits that seemed to bend light around them, making them difficult to track with conventional sensors. These creatures appeared at mining station Gamma 7 3 days ago. Rillick explained, his voice carefully controlled. They infiltrated the facility without triggering a single alarm, disabled the security systems, and copied the entire database. When our reinforcements arrived, they were gone. Faction's 6 eyes focused on the display with predatory intensity. "Pirates. Rebels from the outer territories. That's what we assumed at first, Your Majesty. But similar incidents have occurred across multiple sectors. These beings, they're not stealing resources or causing destruction. They're gathering information. Technical specifications, trade routes, military patrol schedules. They're studying us." The Emperor's expression darkened. In 500 years of conquest, the Corvathian Empire had encountered thousands of species. Some had tried to hide, others had fought, and a few had attempted diplomacy. All had failed, but none had ever dared to spy on the Empire with such audacity. "What do we know about their technology?" Faction asked. Rillick hesitated, and that hesitation told the Emperor everything he needed to know. "Their equipment is advanced, Your Majesty. The stealth systems they employ are beyond our current understanding. Our best scientists estimate it would take us decades to develop similar capabilities." The throne room fell silent except for the soft hum of the city below. Faction walked slowly around the holographic display, studying the images with the calculating gaze of a predator sizing up potential prey. But for the first time in his long reign, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: uncertainty. Meanwhile, 7,000 light-years away, Captain Zora Meridian stood on the bridge of humanity's most advanced vessel, the Horizon's Edge. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, sleek and deadly, with experimental technology that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Unlike the massive, intimidating warships favored by most galactic civilizations, the Horizon's Edge was built for speed, stealth, and precision. Zara was young for a starship captain at 35, but her record spoke for itself. She had graduated at the top of her class from the Solar Fleet Academy, earned commendations in 3 different scientific disciplines, and possessed an intuitive understanding of both technology and tactics that had earned her the respect of her crew and superiors alike. Status report, Dr. Vasquez. She called to the woman hunched over a complex array of instruments at the science station. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her work, pushing a strand of black hair from her face. As the chief scientist and engineer aboard the Horizon's Edge, she was responsible for maintaining the ship's cutting-edge systems and developing new technologies on the fly. Her mind worked at a pace that often left others struggling to keep up, but her dedication to human advancement was absolute. The quantum resonance scanners are operating at full efficiency, Captain, Elena reported. We've successfully infiltrated and downloaded data from 43 Corvathian installations without detection. Their security protocols are surprisingly primitive compared to their technological capabilities in other areas. Zara nodded, studying the star charts that filled the main display. For the past 6 months, humanity had been conducting the most ambitious intelligence-gathering operation in their history. While the Corvathian Empire had dismissed Earth as a backwater world populated by primitive beings, humans had been quietly studying their would-be conquerors. The irony was not lost on her. The Corvathians saw themselves as apex predators, but they had failed to notice that humanity had been watching them with the patient, calculating gaze of true hunters. Any sign that they're aware of our activities? Zara asked. Belina shook her head. Nothing concrete, but I'm detecting increased patrol activity in several sectors. They might be starting to piece things together. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen looked up from his tactical station. The young officer was responsible for the ship's weapons and defensive systems, and his calm demeanor under pressure had saved their lives more than once during this mission. Captain, I'm reading multiple energy signatures approaching from the Corvathian inner systems. Large vessels, military configuration. Zara felt her pulse quicken, but her expression remained calm. How many ships, Marcus? 60 confirmed contacts, ma'am. Including at least 12 of their heavy cruisers. They're heading directly for our operational area. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. 60 Corvathian warships represented enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. If they had discovered humanity's presence, Earth could be facing an extinction-level threat. But Zara Meridian hadn't become the youngest captain in Solar Fleet history by backing down from impossible odds. She turned to face her crew, and when she spoke, her voice carried the quiet confidence that had earned their unwavering loyalty. Elena, how long until our stealth systems are fully charged? 15 minutes, Captain. Marcus, prepare all defensive systems, but keep them on standby. I don't want to give away our position unless absolutely necessary. Aye, Captain. Zara walked to the center of the bridge, her mind racing through possibilities and contingencies. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since they first detected the Corvathian Empire's expansion toward Earth's corner of the galaxy. The time for hiding was about to end. Open a secure channel to Earth Command, she ordered. The communication array hummed to life, and Admiral Sarah Park's image appeared on the screen. The elderly woman had dedicated her life to preparing humanity for this day, and her weathered face showed the strain of carrying the weight of an entire species on her shoulders. Captain Meridian, Admiral Park said, her voice steady despite the distance between them. Report. Admiral, we have confirmation that the Corvathians are mobilizing significant military assets. They may have detected our surveillance operations, requesting permission to initiate Phase 2 of the operation. Phase 2. The words hung in the air like a challenge to the universe itself. For months, humanity had gathered intelligence while remaining hidden. Phase 2 meant revealing themselves to the galaxy, stepping out of the shadows to face the most powerful empire known to exist. Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment, and Zara could see the weight of the decision in her eyes. When she finally spoke, her words would change the course of galactic history. Permission granted, Captain. Show them what humanity is capable of. Make them understand that Earth is not prey to be hunted. The transmission ended, and Zara turned back to her crew. Each face reflected a mixture of determination and nervous excitement. They were about to make first contact with an alien empire, but not as supplicants or victims. They would meet the Corvathians as equals, with technology that would shatter every assumption about humanity's capabilities. "All hands, this is the captain," Zara announced over the ship's intercom. "In approximately 10 minutes, we will decloak and announce our presence to the Corvathian fleet. This is not an act of aggression, but neither is it an act of submission. We are here to show them that humanity deserves respect and that we will not be underestimated." She paused, looking out at the stars that had watched over humanity's growth from a single world to a species ready to claim its place among the stars. "Today, we step into the light. Today, we show the galaxy what humans can accomplish when we refuse to accept defeat. All stations, prepare for contact." In the depths of space, two species that had never met were about to discover that in the vast cosmic ocean, predators and prey were often separated by nothing more than perspective and preparation. The Corvathian Empire was about to learn that they had been hunting the wrong species. Fleet Admiral Krathos stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath, watching the tactical display with growing unease. His 40 years of military service had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming that something was terribly wrong. The reports from the frontier worlds made no sense. Infiltrations without detection. Technology that seemed impossible. And now, as his fleet approached the sector where the incidents had been concentrated, his sensors were picking up energy readings that defied explanation. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "we're detecting a massive energy surge directly ahead. Something is decloaking." Krathos felt his blood run cold as the main display flickered to life. Emerging from what had appeared to be empty space was a vessel unlike anything in the Corvathian database. It was sleek where their ships were bulky, elegant where theirs were brutal, and the energy readings coming from its hull suggested technological capabilities that shouldn't exist. "All ships, battle stations," Krathos ordered, his voice carrying across the fleet communication channel. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself and state your intentions." The reply came not in the harsh, guttural tones of the Corvathian language, but in a soft, melodic voice that somehow managed to convey both strength and diplomacy. "This is Captain Zora Meridian of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace, Admiral Krathos, but we will not be dismissed or ignored." The Admiral's 6 eyes widened in shock. Not only had this unknown species appeared from nowhere with impossible technology, but they knew his name. They had been watching, studying, preparing. For the first time in his long military career, Fleet Admiral Krathos realized he might be facing an enemy that was more dangerous than anything the Corvathian Empire had ever encountered. Not because they were more violent or aggressive, but because they were more intelligent. The hunters had become the hunted, and they hadn't even realized the game had begun. When predators become prey. The silence that followed Zora's introduction seemed to stretch across the entire star system. 60 Corvathian warships hung in space like sleeping giants, their weapon systems powered but not yet targeting the lone human vessel that had appeared from nowhere. On the bridge of the Horizon's Edge, the crew waited with disciplined calm, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the fate of 2 civilizations. Fleet Admiral Krathos stared at the tactical display, his mind racing to process what he was seeing. The human ship was roughly half the size of his flagship, but the energy readings were unlike anything in the Corvathian database. More disturbing still was the casual way this Captain Meridian had used his name, as if humanity had been cataloging every detail of the Empire's military structure. "Run a deep scan on that vessel," Krathos ordered his sensor officer. "I want to know everything about their weapons, shields, and propulsion systems." Lieutenant Vexus worked frantically at his station, but after several minutes, he looked up with confusion written across his reptilian features. "Admiral, the scans are being actively blocked. Their hull appears to be composed of materials that interfere with our sensors, and they're generating some kind of field that distorts our readings." Krathos felt a chill run down his spine. In 40 years of military service, He had never encountered technology that could completely mask a ship's capabilities from Corvathian sensors. The implications were staggering. "Captain Meridian," he said into the communication channel, struggling to keep his voice steady, "you claim to come in peace, yet you appear with stealth technology and unknown weapons. How do you expect us to interpret this?" Zara's response came with a kind of calm confidence that only came from absolute certainty in one's position. "Admiral, we have been observing your empire for several months. We know your military protocols, your technological capabilities, and your standard responses to unknown contacts. We did not come here to fight, but we also did not come here to be conquered." The words hit Krathos like a physical blow. Months of observation, complete intelligence gathering. The human woman was essentially admitting that her species had been conducting espionage operations throughout Corvathian space without detection. It was impossible, and yet the evidence was hanging in space before him. "Dr. Vasquez," Zara said quietly on the horizon's edge bridge, "are our defensive systems ready?" Elena nodded from her science station. "All systems are operating at peak efficiency, Captain. The adaptive shielding is online, and the quantum displacement field is ready for activation if needed." Marcus Chen looked up from his tactical station, his fingers hovering over the weapon controls. "Captain, I'm reading increased energy signatures from their fleet. They're powering up weapons, but haven't achieved target lock yet." Zara studied the tactical display, watching as the Corvathian ships began to shift into attack formations. She had hoped to avoid a demonstration of human military capabilities, but the Empire's aggressive posture was forcing her hand. "Open a channel to the Corvathian flagship," she ordered. When the connection was established, Zora could see Admiral Krathos on the main screen. The alien officer was clearly struggling with a situation unlike anything in his experience, and she felt a moment of sympathy for him. He was a professional soldier facing an impossible scenario. "Admiral," she said, her voice carrying across the void between their ships, "I can see that your fleet is preparing for combat. Before you make a decision that could have catastrophic consequences for both our species, I want to offer you a demonstration of why conflict would be inadvisable." Krathos's 6 eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What kind of demonstration?" "A peaceful one, I assure you. Dr. Vasquez, please show the Admiral what human engineering can accomplish." Elena's fingers danced across her control panel, and the space around the horizon's edge began to shimmer. To the Corvathian sensors, it appeared as though the human ship was suddenly surrounded by a dozen identical vessels, each one registering as a solid physical object. "Holographic projections," Krathos muttered, but his sensor officer shook his head. "No, sir, these are reading as solid matter. Mass, energy signatures, even life signs. According to our instruments, we're facing 13 vessels, not one." Zara's voice cut through the confusion. "Admiral, what you're seeing is our quantum displacement technology. Each of those ships is the horizon's edge existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. We could engage your entire fleet from 12 different positions at once, or we could simply phase out of your reality entirely and strike from dimensions you cannot detect or defend against." The demonstration was both elegant and terrifying. Krathos realized that not only had humanity developed stealth technology that made their ships invisible, but they had also mastered dimensional manipulation that made conventional military tactics obsolete. "This is impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was displayed across his tactical screens. 3 years ago, we would have agreed with you," Zara replied. "But humanity has a talent for making the impossible routine. We don't conquer through brute force, Admiral. We innovate, we adapt, and we find solutions that others haven't considered." On the Corvathian capital world, Emperor Thaction watched the confrontation through real-time transmissions from Krathos's fleet. The throne room had filled with his top advisors and military commanders, all of them staring at the displays with expressions of disbelief and growing fear. "Your Majesty," Commander Rillick said quietly, "if these humans possess the technology they're demonstrating, our entire military doctrine may be obsolete." Faction said nothing, but his mind was racing. For 5 centuries, the Corvathian Empire had relied on overwhelming force and superior numbers to crush any opposition. They had never faced an enemy that could simply exist outside the normal rules of space-time combat. "Can our ships detect these dimensional displacements?" he asked his chief scientist. "Not with current technology, Your Majesty. We would need to completely redesign our sensor arrays and develop new theoretical frameworks for multidimensional combat. The research alone could take decades." Back in space, Admiral Krathos found himself facing the most difficult decision of his career. His orders were clear: investigate the unknown contacts and eliminate any threats to the Empire. But the situation had evolved far beyond his original mission parameters. "Captain Meridian," he said finally, "what do you want from us?" Zara had been waiting for this question. "Admiral, we want what every species wants, the right to exist without fear of extinction. We know that the Corvathian Empire has been expanding toward Earth's region of space. We know that your standard protocol is to conquer or destroy any species you encounter. We're here to propose an alternative, which is cooperation instead of conquest, trade instead of tribute, mutual benefit instead of domination." The concept was so foreign to Corvathian thinking that Krathos struggled to process it. The Empire had built its entire civilization on the principle that strength gave the right to rule over the weak. But what happened when you encountered a species that was stronger? "You're asking us to abandon 500 years of imperial doctrine," he said. "I'm asking you to evolve. Admiral, humanity learned long ago that cooperation achieves more than conflict. We've been watching your empire, and we've seen the rebellions, the resource depletion, the administrative overhead required to maintain control over unwilling subjects. There's a better way." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her instruments. "Captain, I'm reading some interesting energy signatures from their fleet. Several ships appear to be running diagnostics on their weapon systems." Marcus Chen's hands tensed over his controls. "They're testing to see if they can penetrate our shields, Captain." Zara nodded grimly. The Corvathians were still thinking in terms of military solutions, unable to accept that they might have encountered a species they couldn't simply conquer. "Admiral Krathos," she said, her voice taking on a harder edge, "I can see that some of your commanders are still thinking about combat options. Allow me to save you some time and effort." Elena activated another system, and the space around the human ship began to pulse with energy. Every Corvathian sensor registered the same impossible reading. The human vessel was generating power output equivalent to a small star. "This is just our defensive grid," Zora explained calmly. "We haven't even activated our weapon systems. If you force us to defend ourselves, Admiral, this confrontation will end badly for everyone involved." Krathos felt the weight of 60 ship crews looking to him for leadership. He was facing a species that had appeared from nowhere, with technology that made his entire fleet irrelevant. But more than that, he was facing a fundamental challenge to everything the Corvathian Empire represented. "Captain," he said slowly, "if we were to consider your proposal for cooperation, what would that look like?" Zara smiled, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she looked genuinely pleased. It would look like 2 species sharing knowledge instead of hoarding it, like combining Corvathian engineering with human innovation to solve problems that neither of us could handle alone, like building something greater than either empire could achieve through conquest. "And if we refuse?" The smile faded from Zara's face. "Then humanity will defend itself, Admiral. We won't attack your worlds or hunt your people, but we also won't allow ourselves to be conquered. We'll disappear back into the shadows, and the next time you encounter us, it will be on our terms, not yours." The threat was delivered with such quiet certainty that it chilled Krathos to his core. This wasn't the boastful posturing of a species trying to bluff their way out of a bad situation. This was the calm statement of fact from people who had already calculated every possible outcome and prepared for all of them. "I need to consult with my superiors," Krathos said finally. "Of course." But Admiral, while you're discussing this with Emperor faction, remember something. We chose to reveal ourselves to you today. We could have remained hidden for years, decades even. We could have continued gathering intelligence and preparing defenses while your empire remained unaware of our existence. We chose transparency because we believe in the possibility of peaceful coexistence. The transmission ended, leaving the Corvathian fleet hanging in space, facing a single human vessel that had just redefined the balance of power in the galaxy. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Zara turned to her crew. "Status report, everyone." "All systems operating normally, Captain," Elena reported. "The quantum displacement field is stable, and we're maintaining full stealth capability." "No signs of aggressive action from the Corvathian fleet," Marcus added. "They're holding position and appear to be in communication with their homeworld." Zara nodded, studying the tactical display. The next few hours would determine whether humanity's first contact with a galactic power would end in war or peace. But regardless of the outcome, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same. The age of the Corvathian Empire's unchallenged dominance was over. Whether it would be replaced by cooperation or conflict remained to be seen, but humanity had announced itself to the stars not as supplicants or victims, but as equals who demanded respect. In the vast cosmic ocean, the hunters had indeed become the hunted, and both species would have to adapt to this new reality. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, waiting for the wisdom of leaders who would choose between the old ways of conquest and the new possibilities of cooperation. The silent apex predators of Earth had emerged from the shadows, and the universe would never underestimate humanity again.